Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 64 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, my guest is retired Army officer and author Darrell Berry. We talk about what it was really like serving as a gay man in the US Army during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, how far the military has come since then, and the inspiration behind his debut mystery novel, Early This Morning. If you'd like to support the show, head over to the About section where you'll find a link to my Linktree. It has everything from social media pages and merch to the website and much more. Like, share, follow, comment, or leave a rating. Every little bit goes a long way, and I truly appreciate it. Now, here's the interview. Darrell, welcome to Behind the Camera with Andy Games. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. And it certainly is an honor for me to be talking with you. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. And the same goes to you as well. So you are retired Army, having served enlisted and officer rank and turned author. So can you tell us about your time served in the Army, like up until becoming an author?
I was drafted at the very end of Vietnam. Didn't have to go because by the time I got trained up, everybody was coming home. Spent 3 years enlisted and then finished college and came back as an officer for a total of 22 and a half years.
Wow.
In the military.
Yeah.
And I served during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Well, actually, excuse me, I served when it was forbidden to be gay in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And then along came Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So that was the majority of my time in the military. Thus, the book, which is Early This Morning, it is fiction. And I have to make sure that I state that because one of the things I worked in the military was military intelligence.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very careful because everything I used in the book was absolutely open source, nothing classified. But that could be tricky. So I need to make sure that I state that.
Yeah, of course.
And so anyway, I decided to write this novel when I got out, and two things that I knew: gay in the military and the intel field, and I kind of put them together in a mystery novel.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, in terms of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell period in the Army, like what was that like being a gay man in the Army around that time?
It was strange. I look at it like sort of a stepping stone to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came in, it was absolutely forbidden to be gay in the military. You were kicked out, dishonorable discharge. Don't Ask, Don't Tell came along, and from 94 to 2011. And the situation there was your supervisors couldn't ask you if you were gay, and you couldn't tell them that you were gay. That said, there were a lot of people that were found out about, were kicked out, dishonorably discharged. I believe a lot of those were able to have that changed to honorable, though. But it was a very strange, very, very weird time. I mean, I just kept my mouth shut and did my work. But it's sort of a weird situation. And then, of course, after 2011, it was okay to be. There was no regulations stating you couldn't be gay, be in the military. So very peculiar time.
Yeah, for sure. Because like the whole concept of it is quite peculiar and almost contradictory of itself, because
exactly
you're not allowed to discriminate closeted, but if you're not allowed to be out, so it's almost as if the argument falls on its own head. Like, and you're not allowed to be, but you are if you don't talk about it. It seems
kind of a schizophrenic type of thing.
Yeah, like it's such a strange thing. And like whenever having served some time in the Army at that point, was there ever a fear of being found out at that point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just mentioned the second chapter in my book. is pretty realistic. It talks about someone being in a gay bar and or actually several people being in a gay bar and military police trying to get in to search them out. And why I say it's realistic, that's happened to me before. I mean, been in a bar where someone I didn't even know would come up to me and just sort of tap me on the shoulder and say, "They're here." I mean, that's all they would say. "They're here." Well, I knew what that meant. Military police, somebody was there searching for gay soldiers. So, you had that going on. So I guess it was just sort of under the surface stress.
Yeah.
You couldn't, the straight folks in the military, if their wife got sick or their, husband or whatever, if they were female, you could come to work and be let off of work because, oh my gosh, my spouse is sick or my spouse had a baby or my spouse did that. If you're gay and that situation happens, not a word.
Yeah.
So all your personal things that you would normally sort of talk about or with your fellow coworkers or your supervisors, that was out. So it was a little bit of an isolating situation for individuals.
I can only imagine just how difficult it could have been, given the circumstances, especially when, you talk about people with spouses who are actually able to talk about it. And then obviously you're kind of left isolated. And how long had you been in the military until this came into effect?
Let's see. I was in from 71 to 74 as an enlisted personnel. And then I came back as an officer in, 79.
Mm-hmm.
And then Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in 90, came about in 94, and I didn't get out to 97. So my time in the military was either absolutely forbidden or Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Because then when I got out in 97, 98, I think it was, they were still under that. And I believe it was released. I mean, it was changed in, I'm pretty sure, 2011. So I was way out.
So then after leaving the army in 97, whenever, you'd served your time as an officer, I'm assuming that there's no repercussions of coming out after the fact and being like, yeah, I was gay my entire time through the military. Is it just a case of like, oh, okay, then that's because you never talked about it at the time? Would that be correct?
Well, it's just kind of a moot point now because, well, first of all, they couldn't do anything about it because you're out. So it's just, but I think that in 2011, they forgave us of all of our sins because
that's one way to put it for sure.
They didn't go to retrospect.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. It is such a fascinating topic, especially because I'm sure since 2011, there's probably been like a rise of, I suppose, more known about homosexual people in the army, but there's obviously that kind of freedom. And it's interesting to me that you said it was like described it as a stepping stone into where we are now. And would that be because there was that level of not being allowed to discriminate?
I don't know why that they didn't go ahead and just jump from being illegal to legal. I think that there was just too much congressional. I guess maybe the politicians felt like the population wasn't ready for gay folks to be in the service. Although there were many examples all over the world of people serving honorably in the service. I really don't know why, but I think that's just was a step too far to take. So who knows how politics all work sometimes.
Yes. Well, do you know what? That just kind of goes to show that not everything changes, especially within politics, because whether it be 80s onwards, we still don't know what's going on up there. What's going on Capitol Hill. So let's talk about your novel then. Early This Morning, and so the mystery novel, and you just want to reiterate your point that you made, that it's not a gay novel, but it alludes to the sort of times of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So what can you tell us about the inspiration for writing the book?
I'm an avid reader, number one, and I love mysteries. And I don't know, I've just kind of always wanted to write. And I thought, well, I might as well write about things that that I've lived through, experienced. So that's what kind of brought this about. And I would put it up on the shelf, and then I would take it down and put it back up on the shelf. And finally, about the time I was getting out, well, actually, after I got out, I decided, hey, if I'm going to do this, I should do it now.
Mhm.
And then I just sit down and wrote it. But it is it's a novel about some general officers at the Pentagon and some congressmen who are very homophobic and are trying every way they can to get gays out of the military. So they come up on, well, something just sort of fell in their lap. A mission came down, and it was a mission to go overseas, a very dangerous mission to go overseas, basically spy on a country that was developing biological agents in quantities large enough to weaponize. And the reason it was dangerous is because a lot of people in this area of the country were dying because of the biological agents. But the general said, well, why don't we do this in a nutshell? Why don't we just spy on some of our folks that we think are gay, bring them together in a company, train them up, send them overseas, and hopefully they'll get a bunch of good intel for us. And oh, by the way, if they do get sick and die, who cares? They're expendable. So that was sort of the premise of the whole story. And so the book it's a short book, by the way. It's kind of an airport read. It's not too long, just, I don't know, 100 and some odd, 50 some odd pages. But hopefully it's a very fast and read.
Yeah. Oh, very good. And during the writing process, then, was there anything? I know you mentioned that everything that you've put into it is open source, and there's nothing classified. In terms of your own personal experience, was there anything that you'd put into the book based around that, or even sort of, based on it, but not exactly true to word?
Well, like I mentioned, there's a part in when they're trying to spy on gay service members to put them in this company and train them up and send them. Well, they go to gay bars to do that. Well, that part is very true in that there were always military police going into bars to try to find out who was in there,
Mm-hmm.
so they could be brought up on criminal charges and and got rid of. So that is true. The rest of the book is like I said, it's just fiction. You know what I think, though, Andy? What I'd like people to enjoy the book just as a novel, fiction novel. But at the end of the book, I would hope people would kind of think, I wonder if this could happen again.
Yeah.
Or something like this, especially with our current situation we have over here in the States. So those are kind of two things I want people to get out of it. Yeah, it was a fun read, enjoyed it. It was exciting. And then, I wonder, could something like this actually happen in the future?
Well, of course, yeah. And especially when, you bring in such real topics like you have into the book. And as you say about the political climate globally, nobody knows what could happen at the turn of a dime. So, of course, there's, and especially if with it being a mystery novel as well, I think kind of leaving that mystery open in the realest possible way is certainly a very powerful tool. So when it came to the writing process, obviously being an avid reader, have you was this your first kind of stab at writing a novel, or had you ever done anything before? It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was. I mean, I bought some books on how to write. I attended some classes on how to write, but not very much. Just sort of did research. And then, the one thing, I just sit down, and people told me to do this. You've done all this stuff. You've kind of done research and whatnot. You've got an idea. Just sit down and write. And that was the best advice I was ever given, because that's exactly what ended up happening. Yeah. And then, of course, I self-published on my own, which I learned a lot about publishing and whatnot. But what I've done now is this last May, Advantage Press published it. And that was a wonderful experience. The editing was just superb. And they're a hybrid publisher. and I can't say enough good things about them because they really, really did a fine job of editing. But yeah, that was my first book. Thinking
great.
about a second one, but actually, I'm kind of thinking about maybe trying to get this one made into a screenplay before I do a second book.
Yeah. But you know what? I think that could be very good. I feel like it's something that could offer a very fresh perspective in terms of, military mystery, things like that. If you were to write a second book, though, do you have you any ideas on what it might be about,
Yes.
or would you lead into like a series, maybe? What you sort of, well, as much as you can divulge before it comes onto paper, but.
Well, it's very early on, and I believe it's going to be about a Lyft driver. Mystery again, mystery about a Lyft driver, and it'll be, deal with all the characters that he meets. And so I've been doing a little research. I've been driving Lyft every now and then, and are there ever characters out there? I'm telling you, it has been very, very interesting. But that's in the very early stages, so I haven't really developed. I may even bring a character over from this first book. Someone asked me if I would do that because they said, "What are you going to do a follow up on Early This Morning?" And I guess I could, but I don't really want to do a follow up. And they say, "Well, at least bring a couple of characters over into a new book." So I may do that.
Yeah, I suppose in that way, then it kind of like it keeps everything into like the same universe, and in a way, it kind of adds more potential in terms of what you might want to do with future editions as well. But I love your point about the Lyft drivers, though, because there have been many a times I've been in like any form of cab and having conversations with whoever I'm with, and just thinking like, the driver, the very at the front, just quiet as anything, or talking on the phone in their headset, whatever, and you just can't help but think they have probably heard some wild stories. I've met some incredibly wild people, but have just not even reacted, like just completely stone faced, just being like, but wanting to react almost. Like that's, I like that premise because it's something that kind of takes something that you could argue is like pretty mundane, like as in routine as driving a taxi, but when you like break down into sort of what stories people have or things that people say, it really does add like an incredibly like sort of deeper perspective, and there's so much you can do with that, especially as a storyteller.
You can, because there's so much out there. I don't drive that much, but I'm trying to do it for research. But it's amazing. Most people I've noticed when they get into my car want to talk.
Yeah.
They just want to talk, and people talk my ear off. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I enjoy it, but they really, really want to talk. They want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about their children. They want to ask me questions. It just sort of blows me away. And I like to talk, so that's no big deal. But there's a lot of stuff to grab for a novel out there. Man, you've got some extreme characters on
Yeah, and do you ever find that like different sort of demographics might sort of like have like different types of story? Like let's say you get like a young couple in the back of your car and they're talking away, but you're obviously in ear's reach and you can hear. Do you find that like sort of the things that they might talk about, whether it be mundane, are very different compared to like say like a single person sitting in the front talking to yourself?
Well, you know what? That's a very good question. I haven't thought of that a lot. But the single people, just onesies that get in, tend to do a whole lot of talking. I've noticed it's amazing how many couples get in and don't really talk to one another very much. They'll talk to me, but maybe it's just because it's somebody different they can talk to. But and then I've had families. Well, my car's not that big, so it couldn't be a very big family, that will get in, and it always kind of amazes me because sometimes the whole ride they'll not talk to one another. I don't know what that's all about. I think it's because of maybe just looking at their text all the time.
Probably.
But then when it's just one person that gets in, they're just usually chatterboxes.
Mm.
Even though they may be texting, once they finish, then they'll start back on a conversation with me. It has really been an eye opener. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, for sure. And like, do you know what? That's an incredible way to actually go and research something like that, is by going and doing it. And I mean, I have to say it's a very fortunate position. I don't feel like a lot of authors would probably get like the chance or the time to do that. So that's incredible. And like the fact that it's been such an eye opening thing for you, probably even beyond writing your new book or anything like that. It's probably just been very interesting just to learn about people alone. Just I think that's incredibly fascinating.
And you're absolutely right. It is. I mean, I've met some characters that I wonder about today. As a matter of fact, there was a homeless person. I'll not go into he was at a hospital in a wheelchair, but it was a very sad situation. And I wonder about, and he didn't have much to say, but his name was Gus. And if I ever do write the book, it's going to be in honor of him, I think. And I wonder about him all the time, how he's doing, especially on the days that are very hot or very cold, so that's kind of a downer part. But I mean, there's other people that have just, been out doing incredible things and tell me about their life history too. But
but like
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, oh no, that's the important thing. And I think like one of the fascinating things about doing things like that, especially working with the public, I suppose, to like sort of break it down, would be there are those particular people that you will remember forever. Like I look back to like my days working retail, hospitality, and there's those people who I remember who, whether it be fleeting, but they always had like a great impact, and it's just one of those things. And you do kind of find yourself so many years on just thinking like, I wonder how this person's doing. I hope they're doing okay. I hope they're happy. But it is kind of, and I think it's a two-way street as well, because like I know like a lot of people would get into, a Lyft or an Uber or whatever it may be, and they'd be like, that driver was great. They'll always remember that journey because of the driver. So it is like, it's a very like refreshing perspective of humanity is probably the best way I could put it, because that
is a good way to put it. Yeah.
I just think that it kind of comes back to, for me personally, like, why I do this, because I get to like hear people's stories, what they do, and in a sense that like might not have ever been told before. And I think like it goes as far as just even overhearing a conversation in a taxi, or somebody having this conversation with you. Like I think it's very refreshing. But it's like to go to a point that you made about couples being in the back of your lift and not speaking. As soon as you said that, I was kind of thinking, my wife and I do that. Like if we get into the back of a taxi, if we ever go on holiday anywhere, we just go quiet. And I don't know why I don't know if there's this like maybe subconscious thing where you just forget what you're talking about, or kind of are like, I don't know what to say in this moment. I have no idea what it is. But I think it might be a common thing.
That's very interesting you say that.
Yeah, like I think it might be a common thing. I'm actually, I'm actually gonna bring that up in conversation with people going forward for a bit. Like, it's like when you and your partner are in a taxi, do you still talk, or do you just kind of, because like, say if you're like, if we're like in an airport or something, having a conversation, then yada yada yada, get into the taxi and then it's quiet. And I'm starting to think now there might be a theme. So I'm very curious to find out from other people now.
Well, I think, psychologically, I guess it would be a good paper for a graduate student to do, but people, like I say, couples tend to be quiet. Also, when you're in an elevator, people tend to be quiet. Yeah. But like if you're out in an airport and everybody's walking around, people are just gabbing all the time. I think it may have to do with closed space or something. I mean, that's just my undergraduate degree is in psychology, but that has nothing to do with what I'm just guessing that.
But it makes sense. It makes sense, and like being in an elevator is probably like one of the best examples. So like, okay, we'll go back to like your army days then. Like, did you ever have any instances like that where you're around like a lot of the same people like quite a lot, but you're in a specific position and it's just like all silence because because of the sort of way you're enclosed, for example?
Huh. Well, that's a good question too. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I have to think about that one for a while.
Yeah.
I know sometimes I've been in some sort of like nervous situations, like jumping out of an airplane, and everybody tends to be really, really quiet before they.
Well,
I think everybody's praying, actually.
yeah. Like, I mean, I only ask because, like, just the two sort of like settings. Obviously, you have like say like an army base versus like just sort of out anywhere else in the world. Like, and I kind of wonder, do these sort of little qualities kind of translate over? Because obviously, you have when within the army, it's everything so regimented and so like strict to the book. But like, do these little things kind of translate over? Like, it's just you've got me thinking. You've got me thinking.
It might be because, like you say, the Army's regimented, and I know I used to teach. I had a job where I had to do some teaching in the military, which I didn't mind at all because, I mean, that audience is a captive audience. The students come in, everyone's silent, they're quiet. There's no talking. Whereas in a regular like school or high school or college, you've got chit chat going on. Well, it's a different structure with the military, so there may be some of that formal structure happening that keep people either quiet or to themselves.
Yeah. So just on that as well. So like being an army officer, like does that entail so many different like jobs that you can do? Like you just obviously saying you taught in the army. What other things then like did you do like as an officer in your time in the army?
Oh yeah, I had quite a few leadership. I commanded a company in Germany it was a frontline medical unit in Germany, and actually one in the States too. But I was a personnel officer for a battalion. I was a operations officer for a battalion, training officer. So you're right. There's a lot of different things that officers fill. And then some technical work, not technical really, but sort of specialized work, because I was an operations officer for a unit in Defense Intelligence Agency. That's the one that kind of the book deals with. We were looking at medical intelligence is kind of what the title was, and we were interested in what's going on, diseases in the world, and biological agents in the world and stuff like that.
Okay. And did you have like a particular favorite kind of field that you were in over the time? Like I know I say that considering that you've wrote a book based on your experience in intelligence, but were there any other aspects of being an officer that you thought, yeah, I really, really like what I'm doing here?
The intel was really a good one. It was a staff job, and not very many people worked for me in that job, but it was a staff job. But the other jobs, when I was a company commander, when I headed up an entire company of 100 some odd, I really enjoyed working with the soldiers. So the company command job and the intel job were the two favorite. Although there was a lot of positions that I really enjoyed in the military.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's good that you had that kind of experience in the army as well. Were you ever deployed as well?
Well, I mean, I was deployed, but I was never in a combat zone.
Yeah.
No, I was deployed several places, but I just sort of missed it from.
Yeah, just like after all said and done, it's to go over So what was your favorite place that you get? Like obviously it's probably a bit of a strange question to ask, but what favorite place? But like as a sort of army officer, like when you get deployed to a place, even if you're not in a combat zone, how do you really get to like properly experience the places that you are deployed?
Oh yes, I was in Germany for 3 years. I had 2 different assignments there, and it's really up to the individual. And I loved Germany. I traveled all over Europe and whatnot. It was great. But I mean, it's sort of like I say, up to the individual. Some people went to Germany and they didn't hardly get out of the barracks. But I mean, I just love the opportunity.
Yeah.
Learn the language or tried to learn the language.
Yeah. Try is always the operative word in those things, isn't it? Like I feel like everybody kind of thinks they can learn but it's a lot harder when you're reading, like learning off like some sort of script or anything, and
Oh yeah.
compared to like conversational, it's like a whole different thing altogether. So like, so when you are deployed, then is there really that much kind of free reign outside of your working hours that you can go and just your free time's your own basically?
Usually, unless you're in a dangerous situation where you have to be in a certain
Mm-hmm.
uh, perimeter, or you have a curfew or something like that, then of course you can't.
Yeah.
But if it's just a regular deployment for 18 months, 3 years, whatever, in a certain area, yeah, you're after work. Let me put it like you're pretty free to go. Now they may have some off limits places,
Yeah.
certain bars that are noted for whatever, selling drugs or whatever. But yeah, you're pretty free to just do whatever.
Oh,
Mhm.
that sounds incredible. So then, obviously, being an officer for as long as you were, you started off as enlisted. I know we're kind of going backwards here in terms of the conversation, but
That's
like
okay.
again, just very, very curious because it is just such a fascinating topic. So, when you're enlisted, what's the difference in that between being enlisted and an officer?
Well, the enlisted soldier, by the way, when I came in, I was a medic and an operating technician enlisted. And then, uh, and then of course, when I got my commission, I was all these other things we've been talking about. But
Mhm.
to be enlisted that's your regular soldier, mechanic, cook. You're really the folks that get the work done. And then as you go up the enlisted scale to sergeant, command sergeant,
Okay.
all this, then those folks are sort of in middle management, and they take care of all the enlisted personnel, and they are really the backbone of the Army.
Mhm.
Really the backbone of it.
Okay.
I mean, that's where the work gets done. And then I guess you would say the officers are more of the, for lack of a better term, white collar jobs, that they have broad management over uh, a lot of people and equipment and whatnot.
Okay, so would you say maybe like enlisted and go up would be more frontline versus kind of back office type sort of roles, possibly?
Pretty much. Although I mean, you've got officers that are near the front too. But yes, what you're saying is exactly right, because they're the ones that are out there shooting the weapons, being the medics that are right sort of on the front line, and you may have officers out there too, but they're junior officers. So it's, the further back you get, sort of, the more higher ranking,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're covering their responsibility is a larger area. So.
Oh, of course, yeah. Like, so when it gets to the point of being an army general, then that would that oversee the entire army, or at least a particular division of the army?
Oh, yeah. By that rank, then you're overseeing massive
Mm-hmm.
personnel and logistics. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Would you have ever wanted to stay to become a general in your time, or when you got to that, by the time you retired and got out, was that like just the right time for you?
It was the right time for me. First of all, in my particular corps, which was Medical Service Corps, there was only one general in my
Mm-hmm.
particular corps. You've got all these different corps within the Army, so there was just only one. And by then, I always said that I would get out if I ever got to a job where I was getting kind of bored. And my last job, I didn't really work with troops a lot. It was a lot of a planning type thing. And I said, it's time.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
You know, want
No,
to go
that's
out on a high note.
yeah, and I think it's important to do that, to sort of get out of a job whenever you know the time is right, and then go on to kind of do what it is that you want to do with your life. And so, how long between your leaving the army was there before you started writing early this morning?
Oh, right away.
Right away, yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Oh, fair, fair.
But I mean, it was stop and go and stop and go and stop and
Mhm.
go. And then I had another career after the Army. I was determining Social Security cases for disability. And so I would get involved with work, and then I wouldn't write. And that's, like I said, all of a sudden I decided, this is crazy. I've got to sit down and get this done if I want to. And so I'd sort of sit down, and within 3 or 4 months, finished it up
Mhm.
and then published it myself. And then I was encouraged to have it published by a publisher, which I did. And that's the current book that came out in May, is the.
So when you in between sort of self publishing and then having it published, are there essentially two different editions that you have? So you have your original one and
Uh,
then an edited version that was then published by a publisher?
right. The first one was, same. It was the same book,
Yeah.
but but this time I sent it to a publisher who did you know, the editing and everything else that goes along with publishing and did, like I say, did a wonderful job. And that's the book that's for sale is the one that's published by
Mhm. Yeah.
Atmosphere. Yeah.
Yeah. So, see, when you take your book to a publisher and an editor, is there a sort of like fear that the finished product's not going to be what you had in mind? Because obviously there was like slight differences in terms of what you had written in the first place.
It wasn't with me with this one because with this Atmosphere Press, it's you pay to have it done, but you totally have control over the book. Like whereas a regular, you know, famous publisher that you turn your book over to and they can kind of do with it whatever they want. And own it basically. I have total uh, ownership of the book. So I didn't really. I mean, I guess I was a little wondering what they would do, but I mean, I couldn't be more pleased. The things that they thought needed to be changed, a paragraph here, a paragraph there, were kind of small, but but they were very meaningful. Um, so that not a whole lot of changes, and the changes that they did suggest, I was with 100%. I could say yes, I can understand where we don't need this or we do need this.
Mm-hmm. So then would it be more than like grammar, sentences, a few paragraphs compared to like plot devices, for example? Or would it be a case where they might read it and think, okay, well, we could maybe add in a little thing about this, and then they pitch it to you to be like, well, this is what we've done. What do you think?
Kind of what they do is, first of all, when they get the book, the manuscript, they do the editing is the developmental, they call it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it's a big look see at the book and what needs to be taken out or put in or left alone or whatever. uh, and then after that's all complete, then it goes to the little mox nix, period, sentence, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So there's really two types of editing: more of a technical editing, and then a developmental that sort of encompasses the whole book.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, of course. I only ask. It's fascinating for me because I'm currently in the process of writing my own book, and
are you really?
yeah, like it's a memoir type thing about my journey podcasting. So currently in the process of that. So like, I just love hearing what like writers like have to say about their processes, and it's quite interesting to go back to a point that you mentioned earlier, that a piece of advice you were given was, if you have a thought, just write it down on the page and just keep going. And that was actually the first bit of advice I was also given as well. And it is honestly, it's so true. Like, and you don't realize like the power of what you're writing, like how much that bears, and the fact that you can go back and be like, oh, I've already put this in, let me add this in. And it is like a big
Yeah.
spider web of kind of ideas. And but it is like such a fascinating, and I always have like a special appreciation for fiction writers as well, because there's a lot more of a creative element into it. So I spoke to an author called Guy Morris recently, and he kind of writes similar sort of books to yourself, but like there's a lot of element of truth in them. So one thing I'm curious about that is, when you're writing and there's like a lot of kind of open source public information, how was it kind of blending that in with a fictional creative story?
Um, well, it was on a personal level, it was easy because I'd lived it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the discrimination and whatnot. On a technical level, where I had to be really careful was, since I did work in the field of biological agents in other countries, um, I was just I just made sure that I just made everything up. I mean, it just absolutely made everything up. So there was absolutely no gray area between. I mean, the country is not everything is fiction, and I did that on purpose because I did not want there to be any cross fertilization of intel stuff that I happened to remember and me making something up. So there was was pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say then, because you'd worked in, like you said, like did that make it easier because you knew what was true and versus what was fiction, especially with it coming out of your mind?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible.
Thanks for me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As I say, because I do have this appreciation over fictional writers because I think it takes like a really special kind of creativity to come up with a linear fictional story that doesn't deviate, because we all know real life can deviate. Real life doesn't necessarily always make sense, but if you're a reader reading a story, you want to sort of like envision yourself in that story,
Mhm.
but in that it has to make sense. So like
Yeah.
that's why I kind of have this like real fascination with that kind of storytelling, because um it's how do you keep your thoughts just so like linear and be like, okay, this is the story, this is the start, this is the end, this is everything that happened, and it all just makes sense.
Well, too, I think it's important uh, for a writer. And here, I mean, I'm certainly no expert. I've done one book, but to me, I think it's important to start off with an outline.
Hmm.
I really, and I mean, I outlined my book. It was not incredibly detailed, but I sort of started off and kind of outlined it to the end. Now things change and all that, but it gave me something to go on. I could go back to the outline and kind of see how I was progressing along this road to get to my ultimate, you know, ending
Hmm.
of the book. So I think outlines are important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like yeah, I think when it comes to sort of, well, it's like I say, you have to have a beginning and end and in between, don't you? You sort of have to know what it is you're writing about before the ideas kind of come out, because I think then like having the outline, it encloses what it is you're going to be writing about, so then you can't really kind of deviate. Even if you've like come up with a line that might just be incredible, you kind of have to let that go and just be like, no, it's not relevant. Even though it's good, it could go for the next one maybe, or something like that.
That's very true. That's very true, because as a reader, if you're sitting down and if a writer is kind of all over the place, you know, it's I don't know, it's sort of uncomfortable. I think a reader wants to be able to to read and follow something without a whole lot of
They don't have to think
blame.
about it too much, do they?
Yeah.
So, and as well, you mentioned early this morning, like, you consider before writing your next book, turning that into a screenplay. And is that something that you're actively working on, or is that maybe something that will be in the near future?
No, I'm actively working on it. I'm writing to several universities that have film programs and asking the professors if they have any students or grad students that would be interested in adapting my book to a screenplay, or working with me on that. That's one area I've taken, trying to give it to young students and see if they would like to take on that project. And then, because it's one thing to write a book, it's another thing to write a screenplay. That's foreign to me, even though I've been doing a lot of research and I've been writing. Yeah, I've been listening to lectures and reading books on screenplay. But I'm also considering just doing a screenplay by myself. But I don't know. That just seems pretty big.
But I suppose at the same time, it couldn't hurt to maybe go down both avenues, like, reaching out to these universities and seeing if anybody is interested in adapting it, and then having your own adaptation of a screenplay as comparison, possibly. I mean, I suppose it couldn't hurt to have that as an option too.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Uh,
Yeah.
oh, very
Got to have
interesting.
two minds working on one thing.
Yeah, well, I certainly very, very much look forward to seeing how that goes. I really hope that it does turn into something, and 100%, like, I would encourage everybody to check out Early This Morning as well.
Well, thank you very much. And by the way, the only way that people can get Early This Morning is on Amazon, because it's difficult to put it in bookstores because there's a lot of things that have to go on there. But so many people buy things from Amazon, so that's where it's at. You can get Early This Morning from there.
Yeah, that's kind of like the time we live in right now, where it's like everybody just does online shopping, and it's still good that bookshops are still there, but Amazon is the definitely place. But Darrell, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a very, very insightful conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it. As you say, you can get early this morning. You find that on Amazon. Is there anything else that you would like to sort of like plug to?
If I could just throw out my website.
Yeah.
Could I just give you my website?
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
It's dberrybooks.com. That's DBERRYBOOKS.com. And you get, it tells a little bit more about the book, and it's just sort of a one pager, but people can read it. And they can actually make comments or write to me on my website. They have anything they want to say.
Perfect. Well, be sure to check out Darrell's website and Early This Morning, his novel. Darrell, once again, been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
A pleasure for me too. A pleasure for me too. And good luck on your book.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And yes, take care. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 64 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Massive thank you to Darrell Berry for sharing his story with us in this episode. I felt our chat was incredibly insightful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing his future works. Once again, if you'd like to support the podcast, my Linktree in the About section has everything from socials, merch, website, all the good stuff. A follow, rating, share, all goes a long way. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.